going to be beginning this fall semester, beginning at the end of August, with our first cohort of students.
Greg, there was a question about the set of companies that you might already have established, and if you have any record of students getting jobs.
Well, one you met today, Matt Stillman, is one of those people. So Matt actually did go through this program as one of the early ranks through Technest and go through that. The other companies, for a variety of reasons, usually don't like us to publish all their names. One I can certainly do is Integrated Device Technology, which is now Renaissance Corporation. So that is about an $8 billion revenue per year company. Just south, it's Blossom Hill and 101. South of City College, for instance, is a company that's used this extensively. I'm not at liberty to tell you who it is, but another big company, global company, they're about a $5 billion revenue company, software and and component distributor, meaning they sell parts on a lot. Actually has just brought us in as microfacturing institutes, and we're actually doing internal employee training. So here's another way this works. Not only is this type of program and the courses that the people have talked about tonight really worthwhile if you haven't got a degree yet, or if you're looking for a certificate, they're equally valid for sitting professionals. I mean, 4-year, 6-year degree people that have jobs that need to refresh their skills. And this is happening all over the place right now. So one of the areas we, for instance, in this program, we are actually training. There are weekly classes from microfacturing institutes going directly to the professional staff, teaching a very close cousin, right, of what you're seeing in some of the city college, IoT curriculum, and more besides. But the point is, as more companies are looking to refresh their professional ranks, it creates this really positive cycle. The professional employees get refreshed. They say, we'd like to have more of this type of skill in the company. They're going to be looking, right, for people, more people to hire in this type instance, and we will have a list of saying, hey, here's some people you ought to get to know, right? Here's people that we can share your information. So it's a long way of saying I can't give you the company by company. Companies appropriately are very sensitive with other companies using their brand or making statements about that. But I would say it's 3 really big companies around the world today. And I think that number will grow rapidly from here on out.
Great. And just to piggyback on what Greg mentioned, we are just starting this apprenticeship starting in August. So as we continue to work on this project, the number of companies will most likely grow. Am I correct in saying that, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, the way I'd put it is just, when you're thinking through this, what's the best path to get into a good job or a better job than the one you have right now? A job that interests you, pays well, and most importantly, has the potential for pay expansion over your career, right? And this is really important. There are certain jobs that pay really pretty well and you get in them, and that's about what you're going to be making 10 years from now too, right? And there's nothing matter with that, but these skills that we're talking about, you should be in a position you can set yourself up for a very interesting and productive career. And I'd say the key is really, what can you demonstrate? What can we demonstrate, right? Have you built something? Can you code something? Can you demonstrate that you can take a data set like what you learned in Sanjay's course and saying, hey, I know how to mine this data. Here's how I can make this sea of data more useful, or at least I know the lingo of doing that. I think, Python is a fantastic language to start, but as it's been mentioned, computer languages are like foreign languages. You keep learning them your whole life on that. So you keep going that. But I think frankly, if you got mastery of the skills that are being taught in Technest, and presented yourself in a professional and productive way, show up on time, work hard, etc. Maybe it's too strong a statement. I think you're going to have a hard time not finding a good path into an apprenticeship, paid internship, or a good job.
Thanks. So I know that there was someone asking about salary. that $20 an hour is average, correct? And what is the maximum amount you have seen?
You're asking me?
I'm asking anyone on the panel who would like to answer that.
I open my mouth first. It varies widely. Listen, it varies widely. $20 an hour is, I would say that's not atypical at all. Could be more and this sort of thing. But I would actually present it in a little bit different way. It's really important to get a job where you earn a good wage. That's obvious, right? We all strive for that. Depending on your own situation and your own age, it's even more important to be part of a growing industry, right? Are you where the action is? Are you where companies and businesses and are actually growing? Because that's going to set you up not to earn $20 an hour. That's going to set you up to earn $60 an hour. And the quicker you can add to your skills along those lines, most businesses, not all, are meritocracies, right? They're going to promote you and award you in a way that follows what can you do for the business, right? Do your skills actually grow the business? Do customers actually care about your skills? And the quicker you can string those skills together, the more you're going to make, and you can make a lot.
Christian, is there anything you wanted to add based on your work with the DAS?
I think what's important is, and I've been in education for about 15 years, is this program is really unique and it's very innovative. And the amount of support and structure that you have as you progress through the first day taking the CIA classes and transitioning to an apprenticeship and then working with microfacturing institutes is not common. And it really puts you as a student, as a person trying to gain a new skill or enter a new career or build upon a career in a very good situation to be successful.
Great. So, Greg, there is a question about working with any companies from the emerging blockchain industry.
If there are opportunities in blockchain?
Do you work with any companies?
Do we work with any blockchain companies? No.
I'm sorry?
No. The answer is, are we currently working with any blockchain companies today? No.
Okay.
Let me come back to that. What would blockchain companies be looking for? Blockchain companies are going to be looking for coding skills and data science skills. Full stop, right? So you've got a couple of the requisite courses that are already in Technest. If that's your ambition, is to get into a Bitcoin or a new type of a coin or currency type company, you'll be interested in that. The other thing I'd say is that if you look at how do blockchain actually work, well, you have to throw stupendous computing resources at blockchain, right? That's how that works. It's not only data mining, it's data mining with really, really aggressive computing hardware. And another type of skill they're going to be looking for is people that know and can get their arms around computing, which, by the way, you're going to learn in Cecil's course, all right? So, it's back to those fundamental skills is, would those set a person up for a good interview with blockchain? I believe they would.
Thanks. There are a couple of questions about, is it correct that we can apply for an apprenticeship while still taking classes? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
I believe the recommendation is that you at least have the Python, whether it's 106 or 24C, and then potentially also 108, if possible, at least be enrolled in it. Am I stating that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
I think just to get to results, because the results, and of course, Christian's already answered the question, really think about setting yourself up to get at least 2, if not 3 or 4 of these courses under your belt. Employers are going to look at these backgrounds competitively. Let's be honest, about that sort of thing. If you got one class, right, on that, it's happened. We've seen already people from this program get into really decent paid internships with the benefit of one class. But keep in mind, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of people competing for those same cool jobs. So I would really encourage you to think about Technest holistically. You know, you don't necessarily need to take every single course in Technest. I encourage that you do, but that's kind of, the closer you get to that, the better luck you're going to have finding companies that want to pick you up.
Great. And so if we wanted to take two classes simultaneously, then how would we go about doing that? Mark, do you want to answer that?
The short answer is you would take two classes simultaneously. You know, in terms of how do you sign up for them? You fill out the form, and when you fill out the form, you check all 3 boxes or 2 boxes. Now, again, what we will do is we will look at what your answer is, and we will say, okay, you want to do 107, but you didn't know any of the coding questions. So no, you're not going to go into 107. But if you checked them all and you got them all, you know, right, then sure, we would enroll you in all 3 if you really wanted to do all 3.
But here's a natural progression that we've done in the past, and it's worked pretty well. So for instance, and I defer to the instructors who really know what they're talking about, not me, but listen, if you don't have any coding background at all, right, the introductory Python course is kind of a no-brainer, right? And no matter what you want to go do, you should take that course. You know, coding background goes everywhere these days. Now, could you simultaneously take Sanjay's course if you really don't have coding background? And I defer to Sanjay in this. That would be very tough, and I believe it is a prerequisite that you've got some Python background coming into it. So personally, that would be awfully tough. I think I would struggle with that. However, if you look at CISO's course in Foundation, that does not require a heavy-duty programming background. It does require kind of a hands-on aptitude and a willingness to work hard. So Python and Foundations of IoT, I think, work very well at the same time, right? They're actually complementary. You know, one doesn't lead the other, and frankly, you will learn stuff that's applicable to the other class in either one. So if I were to suggest, if you're thinking about doing a twofer, right, in the fall, it would be, and you don't have a previous background in any of this stuff, my suggestion would be Python and Foundations of IoT.
And I would wholeheartedly agree with what Greg just said. The other course that I would also say is totally fine to take concurrently with anything is the business class. Because again, the business class doesn't require you to know how to code either. The 108 class, you know, it's beneficial to have people on the team who know how to code, but it's not critical that everybody knows how to code. And so, you know, that's why I would say, you know, absolutely you can take 106 plus 108. You could take 106 plus Business 68. You could take CIS 106 plus 107 if you have some previous programming background but are not particularly proficient in Python, then that might be an okay choice. But you do need to realize that by week 2 or week 3 at the latest, you need to be pretty proficient in Python at that point. So if you, that's kind of the bottom line. Somebody else also wrote, what's the difference between 106 and 24C? The short answer is the focus. So the focus of 106 is all about how to think computationally and how to think, how to code the way that computer scientists code. 24C is all about the language itself. And so in both classes, we take, we cover how to code in Python. But in the 106 class, we're more interested in why you want to know how to program in Python and less the Python code itself, and more on the thought process that you need to undergo in order to build a good program and to build a good really any kind of project, but especially how to code, a computer project. And so that's really the biggest difference between the two. An analogy I always like to give is that if you are, let's say you are taking a Shakespeare class, you can take a Shakespeare class from a English professor. You can take a Shakespeare class from a theater professor. In both cases, you're going to be reading Romeo and Juliet. But the way that that Romeo and Juliet is going to be discussed in the theater class is not going to be exactly the same as the way it's going to be discussed in the English class. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to read Romeo and Juliet. You're going to read Romeo and Juliet in both. It's just what is the actual focus. And similarly, 106 is the primary focus is thinking computationally and thinking the way that computer scientists think, whereas 24C is primarily about the actual language itself.
Thanks, Mark. So Christian, there was a question about eligibility for the apprenticeship. Can you answer that?
So in terms of eligibility, you would have to be a student at San Jose City College. You would have to be currently taking and have completed some Technest courses, and then you would be eligible for the apprenticeship.
Are there any restrictions? Perhaps someone's background, do they need to be a US citizen? What if they have a criminal record? Do any of those things? I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm going to defer to Greg since he works at the employers.
Yes.
Well, I don't work at all the employers. I don't work at, of the people, I work at a few of them on this. And the answer is, it depends, right? The employers have their own criteria, right, for this sort of thing. So some of the things that you mentioned matter, they do, right, in some cases in this. But look, I would put it this way, in this, there is such a demand for people with these skills. I mean, the reason why how I got into this gig with microfacturing is there's just this gigantic pent-up demand for people that can not only gain these job skills, but apply these job skills, right? And that's really an important part of it on this. So I have a feeling that even if you really get those skills, you work hard, you invest, get that Technest certificate, do the whole thing, right? Those are the people that are going to go places. And present yourself professionally, show up 15 minutes early, when you need to be doing even if a background may be an issue at some employers, I have a very positive feeling you're going to find a good path, right, on this. And the other thing I would mention on this sort of thing is that could be in California, that could be anywhere, right? Because I think it's, one of the other things that is really useful about our program is, and I've gotten this question a lot, is, hey, can I only work at tech companies with this background? And the answer is you can work at tech companies this background. That's my background. They're great companies. But every kind of business you can possibly imagine all over the world wants these skills. John Deere, right, farm equipment, right? They are putting more advanced electronics in tractors, modern tractors, than self-driving cars actually have. I mean, it's way more advanced, for instance. They can't get enough people with these skills. So the other nice thing about what I think you get out of going through the full Technest certificate is you've got very transportable skills. So I think, Silicon Valley is a great place. I love it, but you could live anywhere, I think, and use these skills well.
Great. To just clarify some things on behalf of students who may not necessarily have thought about it. The student does need to be interviewed prior to being accepted at a company, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And they also have to, Christine, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in. And we also have our process of also selecting students. So don't be surprised if we call you in to ask. So we want to make sure your goal is tightly aligned with Technest, and also when Greg plays you, we want to make sure that also fit with what your goals are. So we will have some sort of criteria, and we might have to have a one-on-one conversation with the candidate who would like to be in Technest, okay? In the apprenticeship program.
And one last comment, just in terms of getting to practicality. So it's a voluntary thing to register for the program. You can withdraw anytime you want, but all we're looking for is data that you would already be making public anyway on that. So that's that. But listen, really think through, right, finishing the entire Technest certificate, get the whole thing, right, get the whole curriculum. Those are the people that are going to be moving to the top of the pile, right, you know, in terms of people that have got the entire certificate. You're eligible with one course, you're eligible if you're even in the middle of one course, and that sort of thing. But people are going to be looking for more experience. Now, as it was mentioned earlier, you know, depending on your circumstances, could you complete Technest in a year? You could. It's aggressive. You know, you may not have the life circumstance that allow you to spend that much time, but in most cases, you can certainly do it in 18 months. And that may sound like a long time, but for this level of education and job training, it's not a long time. And I would think about it that way. You know, things that sound too good to be true usually are. So is there going to be some magic that goes into the apprenticeship program? No, it's going to be highly qualified people, right, that have worked the hardest and have gained the best hands-on skills that are going to be going into the best jobs. And what this process will do is helps people to identify, well, what are those skills and how do I get them? And then you've got to get them on that. And then how do we do a better job in society and matching up almost like a matchmaker? Who are some of those people that have had the, not just the education, but the initiative, right, to go through this sort of thing? You know, these are not easy courses on that, and making sure that those people's names and backgrounds get put in front of employers that may never have gotten to know them in the first place, right? So that's the apprenticeship program in a nutshell.
Great. Yeah, and another clarifying point, I want to just make sure that students understand that they will be evaluated throughout the apprenticeship, throughout the 2,000 hours. And at any point, I believe both the student and the employer have the right to kind of halt the contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, put it in a more direct way. You can get fired at any point, right? This is, you know, it's an employment at will. You can quit at any point, right? You know, you may not like the employer and sign it up. So that is the you know, the law of the land of that sort of thing. So if employers were really unhappy, they you know, of course could stop. That almost never happens. There's usually many levels of warning and feedback and that sort of thing. And the same thing for you, right? You know, nobody is forced to work or required to employ.
So I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So as you progress through the 2,000 hours or 1 year of apprenticeship, there's two, I guess, main evaluation points. There'll be a midterm and then a final evaluation that'll take place. And also during that point, your employer will be, you know, reporting back to the college, you know, how many hours you work throughout the process. And at the end of an apprenticeship, there's never a guarantee, you know, of a job. But when you look at just what typically happens and the odds are, there's always a very good chance that an employer would like to pick up that apprentice and hire them afterwards because they've made that investment in the person as time goes on, in training them and getting them familiar with the company and their processes.
So I wanted to add it. I'm not sure if Christian covered, but when we do our paperwork for the apprenticeship, the 2,000 hours will clearly identify which content and how many hours a student has to achieve that competency, both in the classroom and at the workplace. So I believe there's 400 hours on coding a particular language. So we have to build in the content where our faculty would deliver that I call the body of knowledge, right? And then when you go to the employer, we work with the employer to say the student must have the 400 hours in that topic for that competency. So that's how you will be evaluated. It's not just simply the job, but you have to master a certain competency that is outlined in the apprenticeship.
Great.